Welcome to my studio, folks. In this video, I would like to talk a little bit about Ghost Archipelago and show you the core rules and a couple of little things about the game. So, the first thing that interested me about Ghost Archipelago is the fact that, well, it came from Joseph McCullough, who's one of my favorite authors for games, has become my favorite author. And, we played a lot of Frostgrave prior to that. And so when I noticed Ghost Archipelago, I said, oh, well, I'm going to give this a try. One of the interesting things, and you guys probably already know this, but Ghost Archipelago, the islands, the group of islands, they're in the same world as Frostgrave, as Felstad, right? Felstad is somewhere in the north, and Ghost Archipelago is somewhere in a southern latitude in this fantasy world. So that's pretty interesting to me. And one of the things that I see players do is, because at the core, the system is the same at the core. The games are different, obviously. The themes are different. Some of the rules, special abilities, all of that stuff is different. But at the core mechanics, the games are really, compatible. They're the same. So what I see a lot of people do is they'll take their Frostgrave warbands and they'll go down south to the Ghost Archipelago, adventure there, and then take their Ghost Archipelago warbands and go up north to Frostgrave. Very interesting idea, and I love that from a narrative point of view, right? So I want to show you guys the rulebook. Let's go talk about the rulebook a little bit. I'm going to review it a little bit and then show you, a couple of expansion things for Ghost Archipelago and Frostgrave too, before we move on. And I do apologize if this is a digital version of the game. I keep a lot of my game rules in digital form. You can get them from Drive-Thru RPG or War Games Vault, etc. All right, so Ghost Archipelago. You can tell a lot about rules or series of rules by just looking at the table of contents. And when you compare, like Frostgrave and Ghost Archipelago, in the table of content, you'll see that the books are structured similarly, which means that if you read through Frostgrave, a lot of things are going to be similar when you're reading through Ghost Archipelago, etc. The game is unique once you get to the magic abilities and spells. Then things start to get unique and different in all the games. So first and foremost, Ghost Archipelago begins by giving you ideas about the environment. It is a group of islands that appear and disappear. That's very interesting. I like that whole thing in the fluff. Okay, and these islands will appear, then they'll be there for a few years, and suddenly, poof, they disappear and they're not back for a century or two. Very interesting. Now, within the islands, there is this thing they call the crystal pool. And this is important because people back in the day, according to the fluff, however many years it was, I don't know, 100 years, 200 years ago, they drank from this crystal pool and they acquired all these magic powers. Some of them became villains, some of them became heroes. And what happens, I guess, most of these people died violent deaths, but their descendants inherited that magical prowess. And so that leads you to the heritors. The heritors are your primary character figure for this game. So think of them like your wizards in Frostgrave. These are the descendants of those people that drank from the crystal pool, and now they have all these abilities. Okay, very nice lore. I like that. It's very cool. So, you begin the game with the rule book with a nice little intro, a nice little fluff about what Ghost Archipelago is all about. Then the author goes into, in the introduction, what you will need to play, creating a heritor, that sort of thing. Now, there's another character that's going to be very important, and that's your warden. And just like your apprentice in Frostgrave, your warden also has magical abilities. However, one interesting thing about your warden character is that he is a fighter, and he is also kind of an important guide, right, for your crews. So it's a character that you must have in the warband. I found that pretty interesting. You know, there you get a little bit of difference with Frostgrave now, which is great. And again, I'm showing you photos, guys, rather than just you watching me scroll through the book and a bunch of words, you know. So at least you're seeing photos, right, and getting an idea of what the artwork is like in the book. Awesome artwork, okay? So so once you start getting into your characters, of course, your warband is called a crew, because obviously you're coming out of a ship, and so it's going to be your crew. So you have a heriter, which is your leader, your heroes, and you have a warden, which is very important. It's your guide. He is also kind of a magic support and fighting support. And you have your crew, which is, of course, everybody else. Now, you do have something else called special characters. I'll mention a couple right after this. And you can have up to 4 special characters. And I'm assuming that that's to kind of give your warband a little bit of a flavor, right? A little bit more support here and there. So that's that section of the book. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some words. This is the specialist crewman table, and you have all your specialists here. Again, the format, Frostgrave, you know, very similar. And that's a good thing, by the way, folks. When I say that, it's a good thing, because you play one game, you're going to be able to learn the other game, you know, fairly quickly. All you got to do is learn kind of the differences that make that game unique. So very much like Frostgrave, they all have their costs. We have move, fight, shoot, armor, will, and health, same as Frostgrave. But then you have these different characters here, like Pearl Diver, Guide, Tomb Robber, Freebooter. You know, those are all different. So that's cool. It gives the game some uniqueness. And so, unlike regular crewmen, your specialists are going to come with their own equipment. So, you know, that's interesting. It makes them a little bit different. So, okay, so moving on. Okay, and you have a weapons table on page 55, 54, 55. And that weapons table, you know, outlines all of the weapons. It gives you the bonuses, very similar to Frostgrave. You know, you have heavy armor, light armor, you know, and bows and this and that. And you get your different bonuses. And also penalties that weapon might include. Okay, so very similar to Frostgrave in that sense. The phases, and I'm just thumbing through my notes here. Okay, the phases are in the core mechanics. As you get to the core mechanics of the book, you have the heriter phase, the warden phase, the crew phase, and finally the creature phase. Okay, again, very familiar to the other games like Frostgrave. And so just like in Frostgrave, you know, your activation involves 2 actions, and one of those actions has to be movement. The other can be spellcasting, fighting, shooting, etc. One interesting thing about the heriter, and I found this in page 102, is that the heriter can use as many abilities, technically, as there are figures on the table. That's very interesting. Now, you do have utilization penalties, because on page 103, it gives you a table that says, okay, yeah, your heriter can use his abilities as many times as he wants, you know, throughout the turn, but there are these penalties that occur every time he uses those abilities. Okay, so very neat. I mean, the heriter is a pretty strong figure in the game. So it looks like, anyway. Those are my first impressions, guys. Okay, and in chapter 4, this chapter gives you the out-of-game things, right? So, like, what happens if your figure gets taken out of the table, that kind of thing, like Frostgrave. Just like Frostgrave, you know, you roll to see if they died, if they had an injury, you know, that kind of thing. And of course, there is treasure. Now, when you get to the combat section, you know, there are the usual things like a supporting figure, if there's multiple figures in a combat. Creatures, you know, with their little AI, how they work when they see a character, you know, by line of sight and all that stuff. So again, you're going to see a lot of similarities with Frostgrave. And one of the cool things that this author does is throughout his books, including the new Frostgrave, you have these little boxes with optional rules and tips and all these little things. And so you know, you read through it and you decide, well, yeah, that sounds cool. I'm going to add that to the game. There is an armor cap. I believe it's 14, so your characters can't have more armor, right, than that. And then on page 201, we start to see all of the abilities. And that's where the game becomes different because, of course, the abilities are different. Some of them might have similarities with stuff you see on Frostgrave or in some of the other games. But here is where you start to see the difference and feel the difference between the two games. And one of the abilities that stands out for me is Wraith Walk, and that's on page 204. Wraith Walk is cool because it allows you to like walk over water, over rough terrain and all that. You know, pretty cool. And of course, there are many others. Then once you get into chapter 7, that's when you get into the scenarios. And again, you know, you'll see differences here, scenarios that are specific for this game. And when you get to the creatures, the bestiary, you will see a lot of creatures that are unique to Ghost Archipelago. And again, some things are kind of named differently, but they sort of play a similar role to the beasts that you see in Frostgrave. And remember, this game is set in the same world as Frostgrave, so there's no reason why you couldn't bring some creatures from Frostgrave into this game and vice versa. But there's a lot of different creatures. Tribal hunters, there's, you know, undead, like the Dust Devil, all these creatures that are different. The Snake Men, you know, which I will show you at some point. I will unbox them. Okay, and so I'm not going to go over this book. I'm done with the core rulebook. I just want to show you a couple of expansions. And this is a great thing that the author does. This is basically the scenario book for Ghost Archipelago. And again, very nice artwork. And you get some really cool scenarios here. You get some giant bugs, you know, all kinds of stuff going on here. So pretty cool. It's a great way to get started into the game. You set up the scenarios and you play through the scenarios. Okay, and let me just bring your attention one quick moment to Spellcaster Magazine. I have all 4 issues so far. I'm not sure how many there are out there, but this magazine gives you extra rules for Frostgrave and for Ghost Archipelago. So you have extra rules, extra scenarios, extra characters. You can really bring a lot of flavor to your games. Now, I usually tell people if you're new, you know, to wargaming or whatever, play the core rules, get used to the core rules, and then start to add all of these extra tidbits. All of these games that this author creates have a lot of web support. That's very important. If you need like the crew sheets and or the sheets for Frostgrave or spell cards, whatever it is, you can go to osprey.com. I'll have a link in my little description underneath the video. And then you just scroll through the page, whatever game it is you're playing, and then download the sheets, and then you can print them out. And they're very printer friendly for the most part. So, and one last thing about Spellcaster, how it relates to Frostgrave 2nd edition, not sure yet. Okay, I still have to play through Frostgrave 2, and you know, but I'm assuming because this author didn't do any major changes to the core rules of Frostgrave, that all the stuff in Spellcaster Magazine you're going to be able to use, maybe tweaking here and there, just like he suggests in his you know, last part of Frostgrave 2. He gives you this nice, concise little summary of all the expansions, what you need to tweak and what you leave alone, you know, which is great. Awesome stuff. I hope that that was useful in some way, shape, or form. I really recommend this author to new wargamers. One of the benefits of Frostgrave, for example, as opposed to a game like Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes, which I also recommend, is that you find a greater player pool for Frostgrave, right? And unless you're the kind of wargamer that doesn't mind playing alone, like myself, I love solo wargaming, you know, you're not going to find as many players for games like Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes and such, even though they're excellent rule sets. So Frostgrave is up there in popularity, and it's a game that's a lot of fun. Not just Frostgrave. This author has not disappointed me in any of his games so far. So for Ghost Archipelago, that was it. I'm trying whole new ways of making these reviews, right, with you guys. And for Ghost Archipelago, we are going to be receiving a couple of miniature boxes here. This is the Snake Men. I'm also probably going to get the Tribal Men and the Crewmen. And so you'll see unboxings of those before we start Ghost Archipelago. Now, next week is Oathmark week. We're going to bring you some games. The week after that, probably a project preparing us for Ghost Archipelago. And then we'll go into that and Rangers of Shadow Deep. All right, folks, have a great day.